Did you watch the TEPPEN World Finals? If not, you really missed out on some incredibly close matches from very talented players. I'll include a link to the VOD in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. And one of the biggest surprises for many from this event is just how many people were choosing to play Wesker. Each finalist got to bring 3 decks and pick 2 for each match. And since Wesker got heavily nerfed last month, it seemed like he would become much less popular. But many players proved that Wesker is still a force to be reckoned with. That includes the guy who won the whole tournament. That's why we're taking a closer look at Last Guardian's Wesker deck, the best TEPPEN player in the world. Here's a look at Last Guardian's Wesker build. Yes, some of these choices are a little unconventional, but you'll see exactly how they're used in just a minute. The hero art is Ouroboros, which is 22 AP to grab the most expensive unit in your graveyard and place it randomly on your board. When that unit dies, it is removed from play. Selfish Predation is 1 MP to destroy a black unit on your side of the field. In exchange, you get 7 health. Mad Massacre is 1 MP to destroy a black unit on your side of the field and deal 5 damage, split among enemy units. Desperate Act is a less popular card. It's 1 MP to give 6 growth points to a friendly unit with growth. It also forces that unit to be destroyed after its next attack, but that won't really hinder this specific deck. You'll see why in just a second. Murderous Spikes is 2 MP to destroy an enemy unit with 2 attack or less. You also sacrifice 3 health. Psycho Power is 2 MP and 3 health to give a friendly unit +2/+2. False Throne is 2 MP to send the highest MP cost unit from your deck to your graveyard. Emphasis on deck. This won't work for units in your hand. Possessing Malice is a 3 MP cost action that destroys a unit and returns it to the same board slot. It also deals damage to you, the person using Possessing Malice, equal to the unit's MP cost. The unit won't be played if that board slot is filled for whatever reason. This works on both you and your opponent's units. Rebirth is 3 MP to bring a random unit in your graveyard back to the field. That unit gets -1/-1. Forbidden Fruit is 3 MP to give a friendly unit +3, and damage taken by that unit is taken by your hero instead, and that's up to 3 times. The Mr. X Tyrant is a 6 cost 2/5. It has slow, meaning that attacks take twice as long, and when it dies, it puts a Super Tyrant in the same board slot. That unit is a 2/8 with agility and combo. Gore Magala is a 6 cost 3/7 with spillover and growth 6. At level 2, it turns into Shigaru Magala. That's a green 4/9 unit with spillover that gives you 6 life. Desperate Act will trigger this transformation without the drawback that we mentioned earlier. Obliteration is a 6 cost action that destroys a unit. Simple but effective. Devil Joe is an 8 cost 6/8 with rush. It also loses 2 attack every time it destroys a unit. False Throne will target these, allowing you to get them early with Rebirth or for free with Ouroboros. And Living Death is an 8 cost action that removes all units on the board from play. You and your opponent then move 3 units from your respective graveyards to the field. Last Guardian is the player on the right. You can see his hand towards the top portion of the screen. This is his first matchup against Hayakiyo, who is a really popular Japanese player. And as you can see, Last Guardian has selected his Wesker deck. So right off the bat, he doesn't have the best hand. And what we actually end up with is a little bit of a stall game. So we're actually going to use the magic of TV to fast forward about 1 minute and 20 seconds, because that's when this game really begins to pick up at about the 3-minute 40-second mark. So when we get there, Hayakiyo finally decides to drop an Ibuki here in the bottom lane, which gives Last Guardian an opportunity to start cycling some cards. Now, he doesn't have a great hand, but him choosing to obliterate actually works out really well for him, because that lands him the Mr. X Tyrant, which is slow but can generate the Super Tyrant, which does end up dealing a lot of damage and opens him up for an opportunity to use some more cards in his hand, because as of right now, Living Death is an option, but it wouldn't be super beneficial for him. So the legendary Morgan, Dark Libido Morgan, comes out on the bottom for Hayakiyo, and then the Tyrant comes out in the middle, which is going to be halted by Hayakiyo. Now, what we see here is Last Guardian is going to choose to not do anything at this moment in time. He's going to wait this out and just kind of see where things go, because he does know that Morgan decks and purple decks in general tend to run a lot of counters. So we have to assume that, you know, in his mind, that's what he's looking for right now. So the hook shot comes out on the Morgan for some guaranteed damage. Again, Last Guardian choosing to wait this situation out to see what happens. And now Ada Wong comes out, which Last Guardian has to be happy to see that, because that gives him an opportunity to get rid of these two murderous spikes that are in his hand. And what you'll see here is he was waiting for that stealth to be cast, so he's got an active response, but he actually chooses not to use the murderous spikes here. Selfish Predation coming out to heal him a little bit up on this Tyrant. He's got to be thinking of a counter, but as you know, Jay Wong and Horrible Chopstick pointed out in their commentary, counter not really a factor here. So the Super Tyrant comes out, which is great for him, and this is when he chooses to start throwing out some of these murderous spikes, because it's better for him to go ahead and cycle them. There's not going to be a lot of opportunities up against a Morgan deck to get a ton of value out of these murderous spikes. So Ada Wong, definitely the best target for that. The Dark Hold is coming out on the Super Tyrant, which is going to keep that thing at bay, and you'll remember it has agility, so it attacks twice as fast, and it's got combo. And then Possessing Malice comes out, which is, you know, a card that is, I would say, a little unconventional, but definitely effective. And what it ends up doing is it just basically replaces the unit on the board to avoid any negative effects that would be placed on it. So Last Guardian chooses to activate Psycho Power here to beef up this Super Tyrant, because he doesn't have any other units in his hand. Now he does have a Rebirth, which would give him something, but he opts to Selfish Predation to heal himself up a little bit on this Super Tyrant being faced with another halt. But he does have opportunities here. As you can see, he drew into a second Rebirth, so he could Rebirth twice if he really wanted to. Living Death also an option, but again, not a big board to really drop Living Death on. So Rebirth, 100% the better option. Now, a few things to keep in mind. Haikio's got some great tools in his hand. He's got Temptation on deck. He's got Surge of Demonic Power, which we've talked about as a very powerful card, as well as Brainwash. That is also on deck, which is super powerful, even more devastating if it gets hit by the Surge. So he gets a Super Tyrant Rebirth in the bottom lane, cycling cards here for the hook shot on the Morgan, which already has flight, and he's going to use that extra MP from active response to bring out another Rebirth to give himself another Super Tyrant. Now these are weakened, so they are not nearly as effective as their full power counterparts, because they're only swinging for 2 as opposed to 4. And Last Guardian's in a tight spot. You know, he's got half of the health life total that Haikio does, so he's really going to have to start making some plays here. And as you can see, he manages to get a bit of board presence. He manages to get a Slow Tyrant out top. He's got 2, granted, weakened Super Tyrants in the middle and the bottom, but he's actually going to choose to obliterate and clear out that one on the bottom. He is obliterating his own unit. But that does open it up to Ouroboros when he eventually gets there, especially because he's drawn into a Devil Joe and another Slow Tyrant in his hand. So out comes new Reploids, which will give him some cards he's already explored for. When I say him, I'm talking about Haikio specifically. This is also a good way for him to cycle cards, but Haikio has a great hand. That's one thing I definitely want you to keep in mind, is Haikio has all the tools in the world, and this is Last Guardian's game to lose. So he definitely has to make some comebacks here. Another Ada Wong comes out to give another unblockable, which he is tapping on and waiting for the opportunity to cast, because at this point he just wants to chip this guy out. Last Guardian doesn't have a lot of health, and while Haikio doesn't know this at the time, we can definitely see in his hand he doesn't have any options to give himself more health at this point. He hasn't really drawn into any of those choices. So the Living Death has to come out at this point. It's a last-ditch effort. He's got to roll the dice, and he's got to see if he can manage to get board control here, because that's the only way Last Guardian is going to bring this game back. But again, Haikio, you know, his tool belt is loaded. He's like Batman right now. He has everything he needs. And as you can see, the Living Death did not work out for Last Guardian in this specific situation. So he ends up getting the Ibuki, and he doesn't have time to do anything. So Last Guardian actually drops the first game of this set with his Wesker deck. So now we are going to go into the run back. And I say run back because he chooses to run with this Wesker deck again. This time we get a bit of a mirror match. Hayakiyo's version of Wesker is much different than what a lot of other people in the tournament were running. It's definitely more unconventional. It runs Dark Destruction, a little bit different choice of units, and we'll see how that unfolds here. So Last Guardian right out of the gate has a much better hand than he had last time. He's got options for putting big units in his graveyard with False Throne. Living Death is there if he needs it, and he's got big units, including Gore Magala, which will allow him to generate some health, which is really what put him so far behind in the last game. So right away, False Throne to put one of those Devil Joes in for an easy rebirth or Boros down the road. Slow Tyrant coming out from Hayakiyo in the bottom lane. You'll see some of his different choices, particularly the Liquor and the G-Adults are the biggest differences. So Mad Massacre comes out, attempting to do some solid damage here on this Gore Magala. Last Guardian using the free MP here to get that Devil Joe down there on the bottom, and he actually, all that damage goes out to the Devil Joe, so it doesn't trade. That Super Tyrant still living, but here shortly, Last Guardian will have an option to trade with that. He's got another Devil Joe in hand, just waiting for the MP to generate. So the Devil Joe comes out, manages to pop that, and then the transformation, because Devil Joe costs more than 6, gets him the bigger Magala, which gets him some health back up to 28. Spreading Infection, which this was great timing from Hayakiyo, comes out down there to get all 3 zombies. But as you can see, this is a really beefy Magala. It got beefed up by Psycho Power, swinging with Spillover, so it manages to clear these zombies no problem. And he still has the Devil Joe in the bottom. So the G-Adult comes out, which generates smaller units, which can become a little pesky and annoying, which they're easily targeted by Murderous Spikes, which is what he chooses to do. So Murderous Spikes comes out on that. Then comes the Obliterate to clear out Big Magala, Daddy Magala, which he doesn't have any tools in his hand to really do anything about that. So he's going to use the free MP to clear Hayakiyo's board, pop both of his units with both of his Murderous Spikes, which was a great play because those are really the only units he's going to be able to target in this specific situation beyond a Super Tyrant, and that hasn't happened yet. So we've got a weakened Devil Joe for Last Guardian, nothing for Hayakiyo as of right now, and the only unit he has is the Vile Mark II, which you'll remember, when that unit dies, it gives Corrosion, which is essentially the same thing as Dark Destruction. But I do want to point something out really quick. Hayakiyo hasn't been able to use Dark Destruction at all, because there's been nothing that Dark Destruction can target, because it's strictly 5 MP or less. Corrosion functions the same way, so this Vile is not going to be nearly as effective as it would be in many other matchups. So Last Guardian has to be feeling he's in a better situation here, even though he's at a life deficit. So more of the Murderous Spikes are coming out to target this weakened Devil Joe here. So as you can see, that Devil Joe goes bye-bye, and then the Mad Massacre doesn't trade the way Hayakiyo intended to. So the Slow Tyrant and the Vile Mark II slugging it out, but both players here have got units. We've got a Revenge Zombie, and we have the Core Tyrant, just drew into another Vile, but the Super Tyrant is out. The Gore Magala is out, which is soon to transform. As soon as we get to that point and another unit comes out, the Tyrant comes out for Daddy Magala, again, more health, and this is when we really begin to see the tides turn here. Hayakiyo is the one who is basically has a game to lose here. He's going to have to scramble to gain some more ground. The Rebirth coming out to fill Last Guardian's board. He gets the Devil Joe, and this is a really tough hill to climb. I know I say that turn of phrase a lot. Please forgive me. But 3 big units is tough to face down, especially when you're in an MP deficit and you're at a unit deficit. So the Vile comes out with the Mad Massacre just to try to clear this, and he's basically praying at this point. He's hoping that he can clear enough units so that he's not immediately hit with all that damage. Selfish Predation comes out, which is going to make Last Guardian's Wesker even healthier at this point. Murderous Spikes to come out to target that top Slow Tyrant. And then the Possessing Malice to save the Devil Joe, completely reset its stats. The Murderous Spikes brings out the Super Tyrant, making the situation even worse for Hayakiyo. He's doing anything he can to survive, throwing units down to try and stop that damage. But as you'll see here in just a moment, even with the Mad Massacre and dropping the Core Tyrant and the Revenge Zombie, there's nothing he can really do here. He does not get the role he needs with Mad Massacre, and Last Guardian ends up taking that game of the set with his Wesker deck. And spoiler alert for those of you who have not seen the tournament, Last Guardian ends up winning the set. He does not end up playing his Wesker deck because once you win with a deck in this tournament, you cannot play with it again. But making a very strong statement that Wesker is not gone, still very influential. So there you have it, Wesker ain't dead. Despite some big nerfs, he's still capable of hanging with the other top tier decks in the December 2019 meta. Thanks for taking the time to watch this breakdown. If you enjoyed it and you want more TEPPEN, subscribe so you know when my next video goes live. Also, let me know in the comments what you want to see me cover next. Take care, I'll see you next time.